What's going on, Notre Dame fans? This is Mike Singer over at blueandgold.com live on YouTube with our senior editor, Lou Somogyi. Man, since the college football playoff semifinal ended in a not in a good fashion for the Fighting Irish, there's been a ton of news for Notre Dame, transfer portal, coordinator search, Irish headed to the NFL, so a lot of different things to discuss here. But before we really get into that stuff, Lou, I wanted to kind of put a bow on the Alabama game. It's been a few days, kind of in reflection and seeing what all the talking heads online and on ESPN and kind of what everyone's had to say about the game. Like, what's kind of your biggest takeaway? Now that we're a few days out, where kind of Notre Dame football's at right now.
Well, I think number one, Notre Dame still doesn't have anything to apologize for being one of the four teams selected into the college football playoff. They distinguished themselves during the regular season. I don't think there was a mistake taking them. Yeah, Oklahoma was playing well at the end of the year, but this is based on an entire body of work. And I don't think there's anything. When Oklahoma has appeared previously as the number four team, and they got their doors blown off many times in the playoff, including last year by LSU. Okay, but they earned it to get into that four, which brings us to the second point that there's Alabama, there's Clemson, there's Ohio State on one tier, and then you have the field in tier two, tier three, or whatever. Notre Dame is in that uh, tier two, which is teams 4 through about 10, which kind of rotates year to year. It can be Oklahoma one year, it can be Georgia another. Um, LSU certainly snuck in there and was more than just the number four team last year, but then they go 5-5. Oregon from out west, maybe they're going to be in there. Texas A&M is making a bit of a move, but there's nothing wrong with what Notre Dame being there as the number four team. I don't think there was any debate that they had earned the right to be there. It's just there is such a deep chasm between the big three in college football and the rest.
I think that might have been the biggest takeaway for the national media after the game is like, let's not roast Notre Dame. Like, let's not throw Notre Dame under the bus. It's not a Notre Dame problem, them being in there because they earned it. It's just Alabama's just that much better. I mean, the defense played better in the second half, Notre Dame's, but I mean, really, Alabama just probably
You
called
just
off the
you
dog.
just you just got the feeling that they could score whenever they wanted to. If Notre Dame had cut it to 21-14, okay, let's get a touchdown here or so, whatever. It was kind of similar to that ACC championship game against Clemson, where by halftime you got the feeling, okay, they're not coming back from this, but the defense played very, hard. They battled in the second half. I don't necessarily think that Alabama called off the dogs. They were perhaps less aggressive and wanted to run
Sure.
clock more, but Notre Dame did not lay down or wilt defensively. But Mike, the constant theme that keeps coming up in these marquee settings, and if you look at Notre Dame's 8 losses since 2017, 19 points against Georgia, 8 points against Miami, 20 against Stanford out there. That's the maximum. 3 against Clemson in the 2018 playoff. 17 at Georgia last year, 14 at Michigan last year, and then 10 and 14 against Alabama. Look, you tell me before the game, the defense holds Alabama to 31 points. Sign me up.
Yeah.
24 straight games, they had scored at least 35. They had scored more 41 or more in 10 straight. So the defense usually, just like at Georgia last year, the 23-17 game, they show up. They give you a chance. But Notre Dame's offense, this has been a constant theme, is there's just not the firepower that the big three produce year after year. And I'm talking Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State. Yeah, that's just the central thread in all of these games.
Yeah, absolutely. Saban was certainly very into the game late. He's up big and he's still yelling at the officials. We really appreciate those watching live with us. Please, consider leaving us a super chat. That's basically like a tip for us if you really enjoy watching these shows. If you're watching us back on YouTube, please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we're also posting this on podcast format, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. We really appreciate you as well. If you haven't left us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to your podcasts, please do so. That would be greatly appreciated, Lou. I think it's time to kind of close the book on Ian Book. How do you think he will be remembered? When you think back, 10 years from now about Ian Book, in his time with the Fighting Irish, he certainly is in the record books, no pun intended.
Yeah, one of the probably as accomplished and overachieving quarterback that you will find in Notre Dame annals. I mean, there's only one guy who threw for more yardage. That was Brady Quinn. There was only one guy at quarterback who ran for more yardage. That was Tony Rice. Very few who have been two-time captains at Notre Dame, never mind at quarterback. Um, 30 victories, many of which he pulled out of the fire in the fourth quarter in games. And it's like, you hear always the criticisms about, well, it was his fault that they were behind in the first place. Okay, well, we can say the same about Joe Montana. He had 7 comeback wins in the fourth quarter, and against Houston in the legendary game, one of the reasons they were behind is because he threw 4 interceptions and fumbled once. That's why they were behind 34-12, and it was special teams that bailed him out with a punt return or punt block for a touchdown, etc. I don't want to bore people with all that stuff, but the guy is accomplished. He was a winner. Now the reality is similar to the head coach at Notre Dame. The head coach is judged on one criteria: did you win a national title or did you not? And that kind of goes with the Notre Dame quarterback too. Now, Joe Theismann didn't win a national title, but they finished number 2 and they upset the number 1 team in the Cotton Bowl. And he went on to win a Super Bowl, so he's a Notre Dame legend. Paul Hornung won a Heisman here. He was 2-8. Nobody talks about, well, he was a loser. He wasn't any good or anything like that. He didn't win games. I think there's going to be always a good memory with Ian Book as far as, okay, maybe he didn't win a lot of these marquee games, but it's not just on him. That's a team thing. But at the same time, we talk about the parable of talents all the time in the Bible. Hey, there's very few you can look to and say, that guy was maybe given 2 or 3 talents and he increased it threefold. And I don't think when he signed in 2016, if you would have told people this guy's going to have the most wins as a starter in Notre Dame history, people was, you are out of your mind. They just signed Brandon Wimbush, a top 100 pick the previous year. We're getting Phil Dracovic the next year and everything. He's there to be just that third guy in case there's an emergency or whatever and do the mop up. But just an accomplished guy, a lot of guts, durable. That quarterback position was extremely fragile. If he had been injured this year, I could have seen them losing 2, 3 games in the regular season without him. So Godspeed to Ian Book. That was a well done, hell of a career.
Absolutely. So he will be taking his talents to the National Football League. Probably won't get drafted. If he did, it'd probably be in the 6th or 7th round, but maybe an undrafted free agent kind of guy. I think he could be like a good scout quarterback to replicate um, a Baker Mayfield or a Kyler Murray, a little shorter quarterback who can sling it around a little bit and who is mobile as well. I don't know, Lou. What do you think about Ian Book's potential NFL prospects?
It's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard, Mike. Just size wise, arm strength wise. I've said this from day one, and this is way before your time, but the 1973 national championship quarterback, a guy named Tommy Clements, Ian was so similar to him. Both were like 6 feet, very slippery, elusive. They didn't have cannon arms or anything, but highly, immensely respected by teammates. And Tom was not drafted by the NFL either, but he had a very good career, outstanding career in the Canadian Football League, where he was able to use his mobility and other skills to his advantage. And I could see someone like Ian Book also prospering there or have a chance there. Tony Rice was similar too. He wasn't going to get drafted. The important thing was that there was a while, Mike, from the late 60s right until about Vince Young to about 2005, where you didn't have to be a great college quarterback to win a national championship. You know, other than Joe Montana and Bernie Kosar, there was a 50-year stretch there where there weren't any great pros um, who won national championships in college. You had names like Craig Krenzel and John Schaefer and Tommy Frazier. He wasn't going to be a pro quarterback, or Scott Frost and Jay Barker, Buck Bellew from Georgia and 80. Just names. These weren't household names or guys that um, had the pro scouts salivating. But ever since Vince Young, to a lesser degree Tim Tebow, but a Cam Newton, and now you're seeing, the Trevor Lawrences, the Tua Tagovailoas, the Deshaun Watsons. You've got to have that game changer at quarterback, because this is such a quarterback centric era that we are living in. And if you don't have one of those, your chances are going to be severely diminished to be at that championship level. I mean, Mac Jones will probably be a first round pick. I don't know if he's necessarily, um, when he's thrown to as many receivers as he is at Alabama, it's such a mismatch. But Justin Fields, here's another one who will likely be a first rounder. If you look the Baker Mayfields, the Kyler Murrays, if you look at the playoffs the last 4 or 5 years, it's like almost everybody has a top five at the quarterback position, if not the number one overall pick. And that's kind of that step in the evolutionary process for Notre Dame to get to that tier one level that is missing, among other things.
So let's get into some of the news from this week, Lou. Aaron Banks, Jeremiah Usu Koromoa. I think those might be the two most notable that have declared for the NFL draft. That look, Ian Book, like all these guys could have come back technically in terms of that freebie year of eligibility. A Brock Wright, Javon McKinley. We none of those guys we were expecting to come back. Jeremiah Usu-Koroma, we really weren't expecting to come back either, but still a very notable name. Aaron Banks, before we started recording, Lou, you said you weren't expecting him to come back. I had just heard from sources about maybe a month ago that Notre Dame was really, really hoping that they could get him back. So what's kind of your reaction to Aaron Banks leaving, and kind of where that leaves the Fighting Irish offensive line?
Oh, I was not expecting Aaron back at all. I think he's 23 years old. Um, he's he made 3 first-team All-American. It's been his dream to be in the NFL. That's been, a goal that he's looked at. And we talk about, well, he could increase his value or all, and that's fine. But whether you're living on 3 million or 5 million, when you have that opportunity, there's a finite amount of time that you have that chance to really make it in the NFL. If you're drafted in the second round, okay, you can live with that. I just, that was his big aspiration: get his degree at Notre Dame, but fulfill the chance to go into the NFL. And he took a huge step up. I think he was the only one of the few linemen that Pro Football Focus gave a plus 80 grade in both run blocking and pass blocking. You don't see that very often. So um, he's definitely got the NFL body, and if he stays healthy, he can stay there for a while. But now was the time to really move on.
And Lou, looking at what's next for the Notre Dame offensive line, return Josh Lugg, we would assume.
Mhm.
Zeke Correll got some starting experience. Jarrett Patterson. Like, how are you kind of feeling about the Notre Dame offensive line room going into 2020 season?
Oh, it's a lot of really outstanding candidates. You look at tackle alone, Tosh Baker, Quinn Carroll. Here's a guy who was a top 70 recruit overall. He was one of the top rated prospects. He tore his ACL, I believe, one of the first 2 weeks in his freshman year, and you didn't hear from his freshman year. And he came back last year, but here's somebody entering his junior year now. He was one of the top recruits in the country. It's his opportunity. Have heard tremendous things about a classmate of his at tackle as well, Andrew Kristofic, same high school as Phil Dracovic from Pennsylvania. Uh, there's three candidates there, so I would think that would probably push Josh Luck to the inside. That might be his best position there. He's got that same type of big body like Aaron Banks. Maybe move into that left guard position that's been vacated. I don't see him competing at center because you're going to have Jared Patterson back, and it depends on maybe how Zeke Correll progresses too. Or if they feel he's confident that he's one of the five best, then they can kick out Jared Patterson. He came in as a left tackle. A lot of these guys come in as left tackles,
Right.
but you're trying to find the five best to assemble for a five-man unit up at the line. And a couple of years ago, Jared Patterson, it's like we got to find some place for this guy to play. He's one of our five best. And he's never taken a snap or or played center in his career, but that's what spring is for. Is just the instruction, the teaching, and getting your feet with that. But it's been a long time. I think I have to go back to 2003, which would have been Tyrone Willingham's second year here, where you have to replace four starters along the offensive line.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're replacing four, but you still feel really good. At least I do about the guys that they have coming back. And the three with the most experience that we mentioned there, Lug, Carell, and Patterson. And then you mentioned some of the other guys, Christophic and heck, I don't know how many true freshmen will play on the offensive line, but Blake Fisher, Rocco Spindler, those are two ready-made guys in terms of size. um, you know, do you have something to add there, Lou?
Yeah, Rocco and Blake, are they early entrants,
Yes,
Mike?
sir. Yep.
You see, I could see them even throwing their hat into the ring, maybe especially at the guard position. Now, I think since 2007, Notre Dame has signed, and I'm not including this year's class, but they've signed like 43 offensive linemen. And out of those 43, 40 were redshirted their
Right.
freshman years. And I'm talking about guys like Zach Martin and Quentin Nelson and Ronnie Stanley, all of whom have made all pro. The only three that did play, they were early entrants. They enrolled in the winter and were able to go through spring. So that's part one of it. But when they play, it's not just playing, but they started. The first was Trevor Robinson. He started 3 games in 2008, which was kind of a rebuild along the line there. The next was Steve Elmer, who came in early also in 2013. And then, of course, Robert Hainsey, who enrolled early along with Aaron Banks in 2017. And Hainsey was that co-starter at the right tackle position with Tommy Kramer. They both had like 400 some snaps divided between them. It's like they replaced each other every second series or so, or third series. And that was a unit that won the Joe Moore Award. So if the fact that both Rocco and Blake are early entrants, I'm not ruling out the possibility that they could throw their hat into the ring as well. Uh, Maybe even in a co-starting capacity, the way Hainsey and Kramer did. That's not ideal, and I know probably offensive line coaches don't want to disrupt the continuity like that. But I'm not even counting that out because that's it's going to be a lot of competition for those four vacated spots.
Yeah, I've seen Rocco and Blake both in person, cover them on the recruiting trail. And I think Blake Fisher, this is the 5-star recruit for the Irish in the 2021 class. I think he's a right tackle at the next level, but if he's going to play as a freshman, I think it would be as a guard because he is, 6'6", 330 already and is athletic, so he can, get out on those outside zones a good bit. One guy we haven't mentioned is Michael Carmody, of course, the brother of the
Sure,
basketball player
sure.
Robbie. I've heard really good things from those inside the Goog about him. So let's get into the transfer portal now, Lou. Fighting Irish, that's been very busy. I think maybe the most notable one, I wouldn't say it was much of a surprise, but Houston Griffith, former top 50 recruit for the Irish, I believe he was the highest ranked recruit in Notre Dame's 2018 class, entered the transfer portal. Um, your reaction to this this news, Lou?
Yeah, it's kind of been an enigma here. I remember when he was an early entrant in 2018, and he stood out in those spring practices. He was very active, and the coaching staff was the opinion we got to find a spot for this guy. He was recruited as a safety, but they used him as a nickel, and I don't know if he ever really acclimated to the position there because later in the year, a fellow freshman, Tariq Bracy, who was not nearly as highly recruited because Houston was, I believe, the number 43 ranked prospect nationally by rivals. But so, that freshman year, he's maybe a bit of a fish out of water at the nickel spot. So the next year, you lose the consensus All-America Julian Love, and they want to give him every opportunity to win that boundary corner position there. And that really didn't work out in the spring either. It's like, okay, let's just move him to safety and let him study there. And then this year, the safety position was there for the taking. Both Alohi Gilman and Jalen Elliott had graduated. And of course, you knew Kyle Hamilton was going to be one of the safeties, but it's like, okay, your junior year, you've been around the program, you had a chance to really practice quite a bit at safety and get your feet wet. And what happens? They move Sean Crawford, who also never had played safety. He had been a nickel and corner to that other safety position. And at that point is when you start scratching your head saying, something's just not working out here. Now he would have had another great opportunity uh, in 2021 as a senior to start opposite Hamilton, and the fact that he's not even coming back. And let's be clear, I don't think I've seen anything official yet, other than from Pete Thamel from Yahoo Sports. But Pete is usually on
Very
these
good.
things very well, and
Yep.
it's he's a very, very reliable and reputable source. But just something doesn't seem to be working out there, and maybe there's a greener pasture element. The one thing that does surprise me, he is entering his senior year. I'm wondering, is he couldn't be on course for his undergraduate degree, and maybe that might be this spring, um, because he was an early entrant, as I mentioned, in 2018. So he might be on pace to graduate. I just hate to see someone invest 3.5 years at Notre Dame and then not come away with the degree here. After that, once you get that and you move forward elsewhere, that's fine. Just like with a Jafar Armstrong or Colin Grunhard. But this has just been kind of enigmatic. A few years ago, the safety position was considered the best area Notre Dame recruited, with Houston Griffith, Derek Allen from Georgia. You also brought in Paul Moala locally from South Mishawaka Penn High School. And now Moala is at Rover. Derek Allen is at Georgia Tech. And it just never quite worked out for Houston here.
How do you feel about the secondary moving forward, Lou? I think one guy Notre Dame fans would certainly love to see back is Nick McLeod. If he would come back for a sixth season, that extra year of eligibility. I don't believe there's been any definitive word there, but you've got to feel good about Clarence Lewis. I thought he had a stout, solid year. Certainly has already exceeded expectations, at least in my opinion, as that 3-star guy out of New
Sure.
Jersey. But of course, Kyle Hamilton, will probably be in his final season as a true junior without a redshirt year, and he probably be off to the pros after this season, and then you don't have a ton of
Yeah,
experience there at the safety position. Probably is why Notre Dame brought in 6 defensive backs in the 2021 class. Probably maybe had an
yeah,
inkling that Houston Griffith was going to go.
yeah. What do you think? And again, I'm speaking hypothetically. Please do not take, that I heard this or any insight. What about Xavier Watts, who had a heck of a career as a safety? And he's at receiver, and that's going to be a pretty competitive area too. But would that be an interesting move to safety?
Lorenzo Styles, Lou, the incoming wide receiver,
I
he
think you
might
want
be
to give a first look with him on
at
offense.
receiver. Yeah, I think he should come in and be the starting punt returner. Matt Salerno had an incredible year there, doing his job with fair catches. But I think Lorenzo Styles can be very reliable catching punts and also, um, you know, busting a few as well. So, yeah, he could be someone who plays on that side of the ball. But yeah, like you said, Lou, you probably want to give him a shot. He's an early entrant, so maybe, after spring ball, they maybe need him at. I don't know. Like you said, Lou, we're just speculating here.
Yeah, look, you start off with Kyle Hamilton. That's a good start in any secondary because he can erase a lot of things, a lot of deficiencies that or inexperience. I don't want to say deficiencies, but he can make up for a lot there. Clarence Lewis, as big a surprise as there was, I think, on the 2020 football team. He's one of the least I would have expected to have the prominent role he did. You wonder where's Tariq Bracy?
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, in 2019 as a sophomore, he led the team in passes broken up and was prominent and was really progressing very well. He surprised as a freshman. He took that next step as a sophomore, who became a regular, and then boy, just kind of disappeared this year. So you hope you can get it together there for that senior campaign and help at that cornerback position. But after that, there's a lot of names, a lot of bodies, but a lot of proving to do too. DJ Brown, he
Yep.
played quite a bit. I think it was encouraging uh, that North Carolina game where Kyle Hamilton was ejected for targeting in the second quarter, and yet Notre Dame completely shut out a very, very potent North Carolina offense, limited them to 58 yards total offense in the second half without Kyle Hamilton. And Houston Griffith did play. DJ Brown did play. So they did something right.
Yeah, as far as the incoming defensive backs, Lou, I think the three with the best chance to play right away, Philip Riley, the
Right.
Notre Dame commit, then USC commit, and then Notre Dame commit, and now Fighting Irish signee. I think he could be potentially. I don't know where he's going to play, quite honestly, whether it's corner or safety. I've even thrown around the rover idea because he's I think he's closer to 200 pounds right now. He's a big thick kid. I was able to see him in September. Ryan Barnes is a rangy defensive back, whether that's corner or safety. I think he could be the Clarence Lewis of the 2021 class, someone who just kind of comes in as a 3-star guy, even though Ryan Barnes had one incredible offer list and could play early. And I think maybe the safest bet is Notre Dame's most recent defensive back commit in the 2021 class. So that was Kari G. He's very impressive. I'm actually going to be able to see him in person soon. I've spoken to some people in South Bend that have told me that, if G's not playing on defense as a true freshman, he will at least be playing special teams. Like, that is a very good football player. Near me here locally in Atlanta, I live here in Atlanta and not up in the Midwest, because there are just so many Notre Dame recruits right down here. So I've been able to see Kari G in person as well. Super chat from Dark Moon Blade. We really appreciate that. So if you guys really want to get a question answered, dropping us a super chat is the easiest way to get that. We will go ahead and take this question and then get back to some portal stuff. Could you guys rank these three things from least to most likely? Notre Dame takes a transfer quarterback. Marcus Freeman is Notre Dame's next defensive coordinator, and Tommy Tremble declares for the draft. I'll tie them all for most likely. How about that, Lou? Do you want to take a stab at that?
You think Tommy Tremble would go pro this year? I
We'll
just think
probably throw
my,
that at
under,
what? At
my
least
understanding is he did receive a good grade and all. And look, he's somebody who could make. He's one of those guys who could play 10 years just on special teams. He could pick up a paycheck there if he stays healthy because he would be just such a force. The blocking, the physicality. I just think there's just another level he can still take it to as a pass receiver. It seemed like he did catch 19 passes this year. As a sophomore, he caught 16 for 187 and 4 touchdowns. This year he caught 19, but Michael Mayer, he's taken over that position, and I just don't know how prominent that Tommy would be as that second option as a receiving tight end there. So I, I would say the most likely would be to get a transfer quarterback.
seems
Uh,
plausible.
yeah, because uh, right now you don't have a quarterback from your 2017 class, senior class representative. That guy, Avery Davis, is playing slot. You don't have a quarterback from your 2018 class. That guy, Phil Dracovic, is at Boston College. The 2019 class right now has Brendan Clark, who he's got what Coach Kelly described as a cranky knee that might need to be evaluated. So I don't want to say there's a limbo status there necessarily, but there's enough of a concern there where they had to shut him down the last month of the season.
All right. Let's get to a quick programming note again, folks. If you want to drop your super chats, that really helps us. We really appreciate that out. Dark Moon Blade. It's just an easy way to help out our channel if you enjoy what we do here at blueandgold.com. Couple other uh, don't have their pictures pulled up. A couple other transfer portal notes. Isaiah Rutherford, there's another defensive back, Lou, that left Notre Dame. He was a highly ranked four-star player in the 2019 class. Jafar Armstrong, really no surprise there. When you have your top two running backs in Chris Tyree and Kyron Williams as, a freshman and a sophomore,
Yeah.
for this season, and of course next season, junior and sophomore. No surprise seeing the two older guys, Jafar Armstrong and Jameer Smith, entering the transfer portal, and then Colin Grunhard entered the transfer portal. Of course, we all know his father, and Colin maybe wants to go start at a group of five program or a FCS program to finish out his career. So before we get into some other things, Lou, any comments on those guys we just mentioned there?
Yeah, it's you look at somebody like Jafar Armstrong. He came into this season with the most career rushing yards with 505, the most career receptions in a Notre Dame uniform with 27. And so many times you hear this about Brian Kelly, and I'm not an apologist for Brian Kelly, but he's always just going to play the older guys. He doesn't give the younger guys a chance. Well, Jafar Armstrong, he had the most experience and all. But Kyron Williams had all 4 carries last year. Chris Tyree, they immediately in August they were 1-2.
Yeah.
If you earn your stripes, you're gonna play, and by earning your stripes, it's doing the other things correct too. Whether it's you know going to class on time or everything else that comes with being a student athlete at Notre Dame. Michael Mayer, yeah, you had a Tommy Tremble there all set, ready to have a starring role after he was there. And no, this guy's, he's earned the right. Clarence Lewis, nobody knew much about him at that position. There were probably 6 other cornerbacks rated higher than him on the roster. No, this is the guy. I don't care if he's a freshman or not. He's going to be the guy that is going to be playing here. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that there's not a conspiracy theory to not play freshmen here.
Another conspiracy, I guess we should address. Super chat from John A1. We've really appreciated all of the support you've given us in the past several months in our YouTube live shows. He says, "Is this max exodus in the secondary indicative of the relationship coaching of Mickens and Joseph?" I'm not sure where that is coming from. So that's just something you're pulling out of your butt, John, or if that's something that's other people are talking about. But I also wouldn't call Houston Griffith and Isaiah Rutherford leaving a mass exodus, especially when, look, I mean, Houston Griffith played about 250 snaps or so this season. Um, but look, it just wasn't really working out. Lou touched on those points, but I would be surprised if it was indicative of the corner and safeties coaches relationship. I would even be more surprised if that even got out to folks. Any comments there, Lou?
I, who knows what goes behind closed doors, but I just think that with the arrival of the transfer portal, and it used to be that if a player wanted to transfer, he had to go through the coach to, release him from his scholarship. And the coach even had a voice sometimes in saying, okay, we'll release you, but you're not going to this school, a competitor or things like that. The transfer portal, you just deal pretty much with an administrator. And then with the NCAA also giving this pretty much, it's been a joke at quarterback anyway. Guys like Phil Jakovic and JT Daniels and
Fields.
Justin Fields, right away they transfer. And, Jack Swarbrick, the Notre Dame athletic director, says it's just become one of the most distasteful things as a way of getting that immediate eligibility. So the NCAA just pretty much gave it that one-time transfer where you can be eligible right away without sitting out. And I think you're just going to see this at a lot of schools where if you see yourself perhaps not progressing or playing to what you expected, and then there might be a homesickness factor or other things, and maybe you don't like the coach, maybe there is a poor relationship. I'm not dismissing that could be a problem too. It's just become very, very easy to transfer now.
Savage saying fitness dropped a $5 super chat. We really appreciate that as well. So we'll take his question before we continue the portal talk. Do you think Jordan Johnson will play more next season? So you have Ben Skoranek, we're not expecting back. Javon McKinley, not expected back. Well, he's already announced he's not coming back. But again, we're Ben Skoranek, we're expecting him to see what his NFL prospects are. Avery Davis, we are expecting him
Yeah.
back.
Mhm.
I've said that he's an NFL guy. He certainly looked great in the first half of the season. I think latter half, well, Clemson game, he was superb, but he didn't get a ton of targets late in the season. But Jordan Johnson, will he play more? Obviously, can't give you a for sure answer. But as far as the talent, I've been able to see Jordan Johnson in person twice. Once at our Rivals 5-Star Challenge in 2019, and then a few months later at one of his high school football games. And there's just an easy smoothness to Jordan Johnson's game. I never thought he was gonna be one of those T. Higgins or Justin Ross, like dominant 5-star receivers as true freshmen, because that's just really not Jordan Johnson's game. He's much more of a possession route runner, very smooth in those areas. He's not a burner or a 6'5" figure, just one of those freaks, but he's just a very clean overall football player.
Mike, what got him to 5 stars? I mean, he's not as big as a Michael Floyd, who was 6'5", about 210, and you could see just physically ready to go. He's not the burner like a Will Fuller. Now, he wasn't a 5-star; he was a 4. But just the speed, acceleration aspect. You just mentioned that he's more of a possession thing. What is it that got him that 5th star? He didn't have big stats either. He was mainly from a running offense
Yeah.
as well. It sounds almost similar to Dalen Hayes. He was a 5-star coming out of high school too, and he played, I think, only 7 games in his last 3 years in high school. One year he wasn't allowed to play because of a move from California, Michigan, etc. But he was also injured. He had multiple shoulder surgeries, but they based it just so much on potential. What was it about Jordan Johnson that's said, okay, we got to give this guy a fifth star.
In-person evaluations very important to college coaches, right? They will decide whether or not they're going to offer guys. Tyler Buckner has been very, very active in our YouTube live chat. People talking about the incoming freshman for the Irish. Notre Dame, really decided on who they wanted in that 2021 quarterback class based on camp back in 20. What had that been? 18 or 19? I can't remember. Yeah, 2018. So that in person, even in shorts and t-shirts, it's still very important. People like to rag on, rivals camps and the opening, all that stuff. But I think the biggest thing that got Jordan Johnson his 5-star status, because he was around number 50 in the country. This would have been going into his senior season. The years are all running together now. Was he had a dominant rivals camp stops in St. Louis. This would have been in the spring of 2019. He was very, very good. And I think that also, that had to have played a big role. He looked good at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge just a couple of months later in Atlanta. I think, yeah, camp performance looked good. And like I mentioned, he's just kind of good at everything. He's a very well-rounded receiver, but he's just not one of those, at least coming in at this point in his career, like a monstrous freak of a figure like you would see with some of those other guys I mentioned. But maybe maybe he was overranked by rivals. That certainly maybe he's not that kind of a caliber. Rival says if you're a 5-star player, then we believe you're going to be a first round NFL draft pick. That's certainly pretty lofty goals.
Yeah, and a lot with Jordan is going to also depend. How healthy is Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsey going to be?
Yeah,
They just never got on track this year. Kevin suffered the foot injury in late July and tried to come back and immediately got injured again. He's going to have surgery. Um, Braden Lindsey hurt the hamstring, just never got on track during the year. Can they stay healthy? If they can, then it might limit snaps for others. If not, then there's a golden opportunity there for Jordan Johnson to seize it.
I've
And
I've seen people on our blueandgold.com message board, Lou. People probably on Twitter too. Oh, Jordan Johnson's probably going to transfer. I don't think he's going to transfer. I've tried to ask around. I think he is not going to be one of these guys. I mean, there's been 5 already as we're recording this on Monday night. Houston Griffith, Isaiah Rutherford, Jafar Armstrong, Jameer Smith, Colin Grunhard. I don't think, maybe Jordan Johnson transfers at some point. I don't think it's kind of going to be anytime soon. I think you're going to see Jordan Johnson in the spring. That's kind of my opinion, plus what I have gathered. We touched on the transfer portal and just what that looks like, Lou. Do you think it's good, for college football? It's certainly good for the players, but one person I spoke to about this in the football recruiting industry is it's not good for those incoming freshmen. That's who it's really not good for. And I was thinking about it, well, they're going to have the same opportunity in 2 or 3 years if they want to transfer. So, it's kind of, it might stink when you're coming in because, transfers can come in and then your spot's kind of gone early in your career, but you can do the same thing in 3 years. So, my thought is, Notre Dame took, I mean, they have what, 26, 27 recruits in this class. That was going to be a lot smaller of a class. If you would ask me 7 months ago, I would have said, yeah, this class probably need to get to 18 or 19, maybe 20. And now here we are at, 27. So I think that could be a side effect of, or byproduct, I should say, of the transfer portal. And then the anticipated one-time transfer rule that someone can transfer from this school to that school, and there's no penalty. That's supposed to be, that was proposed in the spring, I want to say, and it's supposed to be passed in January. So I think bigger classes really across the board. Maybe the 2022 cycle will be smaller because you have to get back down to 85, because 2021 is supposed to be kind of you have I don't want to say unlimited. Maybe that better than me, Lou, what that's
yeah,
supposed to be like.
yeah. In 2022, you got to get back to the regular 85 count. But no, it's exactly as you said, Mike. Is that with the transfers being eligible, sometimes that could have been a deterrent in the past. It's like, I don't want to sit out a year and start over and be without football. Sometimes that was beneficial to actually sit out a year and just, you know, maybe recognize how much you missed the game and you want to be out there playing it. Maybe created more hunger and motivation within. But it's it's going to be a wild, wild west, I think, with these transfer opportunities. For if you're not on that too deep, uh, your people are going to be leaving. But I think this is where that sales for Notre Dame comes in, as far as one of the big selling points always has been, if you sign with a school and on the first day you break your leg and the doctors tell you that you can't ever play football again, what school do you want to be at? That was, the sales pitch there is, do you really want to be here and all? And that that's got to be out there now too. But with the way the transfer portal and the one time eligibility where you can just transfer and not have to sit out a year, it's making it just so easy to leave and always believe that there's a better opportunity elsewhere, or maybe I could be a star there. So as recruiters, the coaches have to really evaluate, is he somebody that can fit in with us beyond that? And maybe the coaches don't care either. It's like, well, he was never going to play for us anyway, and maybe we could bring somebody better in. Maybe deep down that's what they're thinking too. So that's just how it has evolved in college football.
We've really enjoyed. We haven't done one of these shows in an off season. I guess it's technically the off season now, and certainly big numbers for us in terms of just how many people are watching this. So if you guys really want weekly shows, maybe do even a couple of live shows. Let us know in the comments if you're watching us live, or if you're watching us back. Let us know if you would like to continue to see these kind of live shows on a weekly basis. All right, kind of time for what everyone's come here for is some defensive coordinator talk. Um, yeah, so Clark Lee leaves Notre Dame for Vanderbilt, and that leaves not only a vacant defensive coordinator um, opening, also linebackers coach. So obviously, bring in Mike Elko, you would assume that he would man that role. But if someone like Mike Elston is promoted defensive coordinator, then you still have another spot. So maybe you could go get someone else for defense or for the linebackers, or promote Nick Lazinski, who I think has done a very good job. So, but let's start right there with Mike Elko, who we have pictured on the screen for our YouTube audience. Of course, former Notre Dame defensive coordinator for a year. He brought Clark Lee with him, and then Clark Lee obviously spent the defensive coordinator for the Irish ever since Elko left for Texas A&M. So when Elko's been rumored to be talking with Brian Kelly about this opportunity. What was your reaction to Elko being a potential candidate for this spot, Lou?
Yeah, it seemed a little awkward. It's sort of like a married couple divorcing and then Liz Taylor and Richard Burton getting together again or something like that for a second marriage or whatever. It just, I don't know. I didn't necessarily like the way Mike Elko departed after one season there towards Texas A&M. But if Brian Kelly and the staff are fine with it, who the heck am I to say? Their job is to get the best possible uh, coaches to instruct the players that they recruit. And if they feel that that's the direction to go, well, good luck with them.
You would think it would be good from a schematic standpoint, in that you don't have to change the defense, because this whole rover position that Jeremiah Wusu-Koramo just won the Butkus Award, and then you're bringing in Prince Colley, who won the Butkus Award for the high school ranks. Like, Colley can come in and play that same position. So I mean, from the familiarity standpoint, you got to feel
And,
good. And there's still probably some players that Elko recruited to Notre Dame
and,
on the defense, right?
And that's the priority that Brian Kelly did reveal, is that we're not going to a 3-4 defense. Now they sometimes in the base in the nickel and dime packages they can play with three down linemen, but their base is always four linemen. That's what they're going to utilize. That's what they're going to recruit to. That's what they have recruited to the past 4 years. And now to just schematically say, okay, we're going to change this around dramatically, and it'll take us 2 or 3 years before we get our kind of guys in for this system. No, there's no time for that, and that's the number one priority that Brian Kelly said, is that there's going to have to be just a marriage between what they've been able to recruit to the system that they're going to be running.
So Mike Elko is in the mix, at least in terms of what we can throw in the rumor mill. The in-house candidates, of course. That I mean, I think we've been talking about these guys, Lou, since before Clark Lee even left Notre Dame. Was that if he were to, Mike Elston and Terry Joseph are likely the two guys that you're going to hear as the in-house candidates. And one thought I have, Lou, is that was likely what we all thought. It's going to be one of those two, and I would lean more towards Elston at this point. But after Notre Dame lost to Alabama, and um, really, even back to back weeks when you look at the Clemson game before, defense, held strong late, but really, Clemson and Alabama, really could have piled on some points. At least in my opinion. So do you feel like Kelly might have some pressure, maybe internally or externally, to go out and have an external hire and not go with an in-house candidate? Like, do you think he's, just gonna kind of play it safe, and maybe not play it safe is the right word or phrase, but maybe he might feel some pressure or lack of a better word to go
Well,
to an
if
outside candidate.
Well, is the pressure coming from message boards, or is it coming from Jack Swarbrick or Notre Dame administrators? Brian Kelly's going to do, it's not going to be predicated on what external forces might be saying he should be doing. At the same time, he's sometimes criticized for making the too easy choices, just people within his that he's familiar with, whether it's Tommy Rees as the offensive coordinator hired last year, or Jeff Quinn, who he has worked with 30 years, being hired as the offensive line coach in 2018 to replace Harry Hiestand. Um, Maybe even to a degree, Brian Van Gorder, who he had a past, affiliation with in the 90s, but that was a while ago. But I think that's why there's this feeling that because those were the easy hires within the Jeff Quinns, the Tommy Reeses, that okay, the natural move is to go to um, somebody's that he's already knows. Terry Joseph, who also has the past defense coordinator title, and Mike Elston, who he has worked with for 17 consecutive years, dating back to the Central Michigan. I think when he had to go outside in 2017 for the hires of Chip Long on offense and Mike Elko on defense, look, Notre Dame was coming off a 4-8 season, and that was not something. There had to be a dramatic shakeup.
Sure.
That wasn't a tweaking or anything. That had to be torn down and rebuilt. When you go 43-8 the past 4 years, um, which is the fifth best record in that 4 year period among schools, it's not like you have to have a complete reboot. Now, at the same time, I understand that when Ohio State a few years ago was shut out in the playoff 31-0 by Clemson, uh, being in the playoff wasn't enough for Urban Meyer. It's like he got rid of the staff and rebooted. And sometimes that's where maybe there might be that difference between a Nick Saban or an Urban Meyer and a Brian Kelly, is that those guys are not afraid, or some might use the word complacent with, oh, okay, we made the playoff. Don't try to repair something that's not broken. It's like we've made the playoff 2 of the last 3 years, and there's something to be said for that, but there's got to be that balance of, okay, what takes us to that next level? So it's not the same thing as 2016, where there was that pressure of these hires that we bring in, they can't just be safe ones. These are something we have to go out externally. But now it's a different situation, and it'll be intriguing to see what direction he does take.
I forgot to mention when we were talking about players coming back and leaving. Kurt Heinisch is coming back. He is someone who, during a normal year, would have exhausted his eligibility, but he is taking advantage of his kind of that 1 year COVID situation in terms of the NCAA giving a freebie year of eligibility. So big boost to Notre Dame's defensive line. I think probably the external name that people are most excited to talk about, and certainly have been in our YouTube live comments, is Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator from Cincinnati, former Ohio State Buckeyes player. It's kind of like that sexy name in the college, coaching carousel. LSU is also talking to him. There's a familiarity there with, Brian Kelly was once obviously Cincinnati's head coach. Mike Mickens was just at Cincinnati until Notre Dame. He started at Notre Dame in March. Did you get to watch much of Cincinnati this year, Lou, or maybe even against
No,
Georgia?
I
The defense
really
looked great.
didn't. Luke Fickle's just did a tremendous job there. Mike Denbrock, who worked a number of years here with Brian Kelly on the offensive side of the ball, Marcus Freeman on defense. Sometimes I wonder how much of it is Luke Fickle calling the defense as
Sure.
well. Who knows? That's something for Brian Kelly to vet out as to how the fit would work and all. But anytime you have a younger guy from a program that has been such a surprise like Cincinnati being in the top 10 most of this year, um, people from that staff are going to be appealing as far as reaching a higher level.
Yeah. Brian Kelly's here. Obviously, he came from Cincinnati.
Sure.
So yeah, the program's been good to Notre Dame in the past decade. All right, I think that's gonna do it. Getting close to an hour here for our live show, kind of talking about all things Notre Dame football. For more on the defensive coordinator search, recruiting, basketball coverage, men and women, kind of everything you could want really with Notre Dame football, basketball, all the coverage, Notre Dame athletics. Make sure you log into blueandgold.com. You can even use promo code BGI30, which will get you a 30-day free trial to see if you like our coverage. Get the next month, on us, and just check out what's going on at our website and all the latest information on the defensive coordinator search. I'm Mike Singer. He's Lou Somogyi, and we are signing off until next time.